We are back on Morning Line. Thanks for joining us on this Wednesday. Nick Barris with us, and our guest, I'm Nick Barris, is with us, Ken Paulson from MTSU, the Free Speech Center. Good morning to you, Ken. Thank you for joining us this morning and picking up where we left off. Hey, listen, when we're talking about, banning books and the like, we hear about it from lawmakers, but so often, lawmakers, as you well know, they're doing whatever they think is going to keep them in power and get them reelected. So I'm guessing there's a lot of parents out there, their constituents, that are saying that they have concerns about these books. Is it coming from parents, you think?
I don't think it's coming from parents at all. It is clearly coordinated across this country. You hear they have the National Library Association saying that they're seeing complaints in numbers like they have never seen before. And so this is a wave. It's fed by politicians, sped up by the internet, and suddenly you have lists of books all across this country that some parents want banned, but other parents are, I suspect, more like you, Nick, and others who actually respect the educational process and teachers and parents and look to them to make sure their students are in a good environment. And I also tell you that people keep talking about the freedom, that our kids should be free from undue influences. A lot of parents want their children to get a full education and don't want ideas filtered out that the kids can't experience. That it is part of an education to prepare young people for the world. Now, a lot of that's, depending on how old your child is, there's a different standard for a 6-year-old and a 16-year-old, and that's appropriate. But this notion that all these books should be banned for all time from all students, it's just political. And of course, I can't blame the parents who feel that way, because they're being told by their leaders that there's porn in the high school library. And what's your natural reaction to that? Well, there is no porn in your high school library, and people are misleading you.
Let's take a phone call from Tom. Tom, good morning. Hi, Tom.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
It's insane what's going on in Tennessee. I beelined it to the library yesterday and got my new library card. I'm looking at it, and it says, I read banned books. And oh, by the way, I got my second booster shot at Walgreens yesterday, and it was free.
Oh, hey, thank you for that. Ken, we talked about COVID shots yesterday, and we weren't sure if it was free or not, and I'm glad you mentioned that. But, he went and got himself his library card and says he reads banned books. Now, have books to this point in Tennessee been actually pulled from shelves?
What has happened in Tennessee and elsewhere is actually pulled from shelves is a very good word for it. The books are set aside, right? So they don't disappear from the schools entirely. And if the winds should change, they always have that copy of Mouse they can put back on the shelf. Actually, this is a good. I mentioned PICO earlier, and that's what's missing in this whole public debate. This 1982 case said we school boards have the authority and, in theory, the expertise to decide that books are not appropriate for the classroom or for the library, but they may not ban those books for political reasons. Mm-hmm. They may not ban those books because they don't like the ideas. This is the U.S. Supreme Court saying this. And so what it does say, if you're a public school of education, if you're a school board of education, you actually have to establish a process. You have to look at the book. Someone has to have read it. There needs to be some documentation about why that particular book does not meet the standards. And what's happening instead, in violation of that U.S. Supreme Court standard, is books are just being pulled off because some parent somewhere has angrily denounced it. That's not the way it's supposed to work in this country. If we're going to take ideas out of the marketplace of ideas, especially for young people, you have to have a reason for it if you're government, and you need to write that reason down, and it has to make sense. Then you can do it. Supreme Court says you can do it, but no more of these shortcuts where the librarian is sent in with a list of books that somebody in Oklahoma compiled and say, clear these out because there might be unpleasant coverage. That's just wrong.
More phone calls, Ken. Let's take Ann next on the horn. Ann, good morning. Hello, Ann.
Good morning. When I see banning books in public schools, I think to my years of working in Metro's high schools. And I'm going to use one book, and just one book, and that is The Kite Runner. And when I first started at the middle school, I was quite surprised that 8th graders were reading this book. I wasn't quite that surprised when high schoolers were. And I was surprised that it was in our libraries, but it wasn't. It was in our classrooms. And it was in our classrooms along with probably 50 other titles. And these books had been accrued by teachers, and they were in sets. And especially at MLK and especially at Hume Fogg, our two academic schools, our two top performing schools. And these books were sent around by classrooms, and they were shared by teachers. And they are all the titles that you are seeing now. Let's ban these books. These are all character building books. These are all books that quite possibly may have violence in them. They may have sexual connotations at times, but they are books with merit.
Right.
They are books that are classic, have been in our libraries for years, but have been pulled from shelves, and our teachers know that our students need to be reading. And to find all these books will take years because they are stored in our classrooms. I know, I counted the books for 5 years in every building that I worked in. And to find all the books, to ban the books, will take years because our teachers and our parents have spent years earning the money to provide class sets.
Let me ask you this, Ken, and that's interesting. I don't know if you're aware of what she's saying. Ann certainly has lived it. She's a former educator. If that's indeed the case, I mean, will teachers then be held responsible under some of these laws if a book is banned and they still, one way or the other, introduce it to a student?
Well, sure, they could be held accountable for it because they're employees. And if your boss says take that book out of the classroom and they don't, they can lose their job. That's pretty basic. I'm intrigued by the comment. It sounds to me like those books were not part of a curriculum, but were actually part of almost a mini library in a classroom, so kids would have access to it. So, the same laws that apply to school libraries would apply also to those, if you will, satellite libraries and classrooms. I wish it were true. I wish that there were so many books out there that no one could ban them. But I mean, I think a principal could walk from classroom to classroom and say, put those in a bin. We're never going to see those again. And I hope that never happens. But I love the comments about enriching lives and teaching values. Absolutely true. And the thing that kind of gets unsaid in all this, in a society in which our children are absolutely captivated by video games and TikTok, and the internet offers all kinds of dark corners, the notion that they would want to read is so important. And I am also a professor at MTSU, and I teach a variety of courses, and those involve essays. And our children do not have the language skills, the writing skills that children 10 years ago had. and far less than 20 years ago. And the biggest difference is they're not reading. Instead of banning books, we should be applauding librarians and teachers for instilling young people with some intellectual curiosity to read. There's all this talk about the internet ruining society. Maybe, but what really is ruining society is Americans no longer reading or wanting to know. So, it's just crazy to discourage the reading of any book.
Yeah, I remember growing up, my mom always big on reading and pushing. She goes, Nick, I don't care what you read. If you sit here all morning and read the Fruit Loop box, I'm good with that. Any type of reading is what I was taught to do, and you're absolutely right. And the thing is, it's, to me, just truly laughable if there are parents out there that are concerned that, oh my gosh, this book is going to harm my child, when, as you just said, some of the crazy stuff we see on TikTok, and don't get me started on the video games, the parents are fine with that, or any R-rated movies their kids go see. But there's some book that they think, which has substance, but maybe some violence, is going to damage their kid. Those parents have got a problem. They got to get a clue. Let's go next to Margaret.
And what are the odds?
Yeah. What's that?
I say, what are the odds that they've actually read the book?
Yeah, the odds are 0, okay? And the odds are probably 2, they haven't seen half the video games their kids play. And if they did, their jaw would drop. Let's go to Margaret. Margaret, good morning. Hi, Margaret.
Hi, how are you this morning?
Good. What's on your mind?
Well, myself, I think this whole thing is ridiculous. It's as if they don't want the children to learn deductive reasoning and critical thinking. One of the banned books, To Kill a Mockingbird, was quite influential in my life. I still read it every year. What are they going to ban next? Romeo and Juliet? It's about young love.
Yeah.
And, Silas Marner, a single man raising a little girl. This is ridiculous. Thank goodness for public libraries, and thank goodness for bookstores. And that's all I have to say. Kids don't speak proper English. They don't use proper grammar. That's what they get from books. Kids should be encouraged to read and expand their minds.
Huh? Well said. Couldn't agree with her more on that. And that's what I think Ken was talking about, how important reading is. And people don't read as much as they did because there are so many other options now. And Ken, listen, we got to take a quick break, but if you want to comment on that and we have more calls, more of our conversation with Ken Paulson and the whole idea of banning books in schools when we come back right after this.
This is a Storm 5 weather update. For weather on the go, download the Storm Shield app.
I'm News Channel 5 weekday morning meteorologist Nikki D. Ray. Here's a live look at the Power 5 radars accompanied with the satellite. You'll notice we do have a few clouds out there. Winds